All right, good morning. It's 9 o'clock. If I could get everybody to take their seats. All right, good morning. I am calling to order the April 10th PPACG Board of Directors meeting. Mr. Director, let's establish a quorum here. I think we have, between people in the room and online, I think we have a quorum.
Yes, we need 7 for a quorum. I count 7 in the room. Why don't we go around and do self-introductions in the room, and then Jared can help us with folks online.
Great, thank you.
Dave Donaldson, Colorado Springs City Council.
It doesn't
You
turn.
got it. That's it.
Okay, Lynette Crow Iverson, City Council, Colorado Springs.
Andy Gunning, PPACG.
John Graham, Mayor, City of Manitou Springs.
Roland Gardine used to be Mayor Pro Tem Callahan, Colorado.
Todd Dixon, Mayor, Green Mountain Falls, Colorado.
Cheryl Richards, Office Manager for PPACG.
Colorado Springs.
Eric Stone, Teller County Commissioner.
And online?
Glant Havener, Mayor of Palmer Lake.
Mitch LeKine, Mayor of Monument.
Dr. Deetra Duncan, Fountain City Council at Large.
And that just leaves Commissioner Elsner.
Okay, great. All right, so we have a quorum today. First item on the agenda is the agenda approval. What would the board like to do?
I'll move approval.
Second,
Mayor Dixon.
Eric Stone, Teller County.
Oh, come on, you guys got to give Roland a chance today, okay? All right. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That takes us on in item 3, introductions, public comments, and presentations. Item 3A, Phil Roy, 5-year recognition.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. John is actually going to say a little bit something about Phil, so I'm going to let him come.
That'll be nice.
Well, we'll start with Phil is very tall. And so when there's stuff on a very high shelf, no, Phil is one of the most kindest human beings you'll ever run into. Anytime we have anything going on around here, and as you well know with PPACG, it could be one day we're doing some sort of thing with AAA and the food bank, or they're getting a delivery of a gazillion yellow books or something. Phil is usually the first person there to start taking the door apart so we can get the pallets in, and everything else. He just is one of the best coworkers anyone could hope for. He's always there with a smile and ready to lend a helping hand with anything. That being said, from the technical side, hopefully some of you do remember when he gave that presentation on the crash dashboard. So again, he's done a great job compiling all the crash data, as well as putting together the actual crash dashboard. So we're happy you're here, Phil, and hopefully I would say another 5 years, but you're so young, let's go for another 25, okay? So again, thank you very much. And photo op. Oh. And then Andy and I shake hands? No, no.
Congratulations, Phil. You always put your presentations into things we can always understand. So thank you very much. All right. That takes us on to item 3B, recognition of Callahan Mayor Pro Tem Roland Gardine.
Well, you guys, man, I was not successful in my reelection. So, man, this is going to be my last day. I'm resigning as of today. But I wanted to tell everybody, thank you for teaching me a lot and tolerating me a lot. And but the only thing I have bad to say is that I don't like the MPO rating.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We really appreciate all your great support and your advocacy of Calhan, and on behalf of the region, you've done so much. I hope the folks in Calhan realize that, how much you've advocated for improvements on US 24, advocated for additional senior services to be provided out on the Eastern Plains, and you've just done a phenomenal job, and it's been great to get to know you, Roland, so really appreciate that. Our resident expert photographer, Jody Barker, is not with us. I think he's online. He's back east this week, but he took this lovely photograph just outside of Calhan, and we wanted to give this to you as a small token of our appreciation and a way for you to remember us as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Did anybody want to say anything? Commissioner Williams?
We can go.
Roland? It's been really nice working with you. You say it like you see it, right? You just say it like you see it. And you are like a teddy bear too. And I know you try to give your wife all the credit, but when I got married last year, you brought me a cake and Leroy and I was like, wow, I was very touched by that. So I like all your comments. They're just true and real. And I'm going to miss you. Thank you for being a part of this board.
Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Williams?
And Roland, I want you to know I'm going to miss you too. We sure had fun running a little $300 Pikes Peak RTA campaign. And I don't know as if the citizens, when they voted, realized that you were the one who helped get that, get that on the ballot and get that through. And they're now benefiting from money they were sending to Falcon. They're now getting back into their own community. And honestly, every time I go out to the county fair, I don't know as if I've ever seen a view that pretty. So I guess I need to look for the beauty in Calhan now and not the potholes on the road to the county fair, which is usually what I end up remembering.
Well, we're still working on potholes. That's okay.
Councilmember Donaldson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And Roland, I don't know what kind of communism you guys have going on out there in Calhan now, where they don't reelect Marine Corps Purple Heart winning Vietnam veterans, but you've been one of the real highlights of my service on PPACG, serving with you. So I appreciate your service to our country and the city of Calhan and to this county here on PPACG. And I look forward to being your friend, as long as I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor Dixon?
Yeah, as 1/3 of the mayor trio over here, you're definitely going to leave a gap. And hopefully your successor can fill the gap, but you will definitely be missed. Really enjoyed all the time we spent together and going out to the lunches, especially, so yeah, don't be a stranger. Come up to Green Mountain Falls anytime.
Thank you. The best thing is about serving on this board here was everybody has a common focus, man, on using common sense, not political sense, but common sense to help all of our communities. And I think that's a very good thing. So thank you.
Mayor LaKind?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Roland, I know we've not worked long together, but I wanted to let you know that I enjoyed the time and the conversations that we've had. I've sent you my personal contact information. Hopefully you can still access your town email. Please keep in touch. I'd like to come out and visit Calhan and hang out with you.
Come on out to the fair, man. It's on July 13th through the 20th. And buy some raffle tickets for the VFW.
Will do.
Yeah.
Mayor Dixon?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Raleigh, I'd like to, kind of repeat the comments you've heard already, but I admire your unvarnished, direct, common sense approach to things. I wish we could bottle that and spread it out elsewhere in government. I think it's refreshing. I like that Marine hands-on, can-do attitude. I will miss that. I've really enjoyed working with you, getting to know you. I think you've done tremendous service both to the people of Callahan and to the people of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. So keep that as a memory. Be satisfied with what you've done. You've done yeomanly service. It's been an honor and a pleasure to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And we've been joined by Commissioner Vanderwerth. We are just Mayor Pro Tem Gardine was not reelected, so we're just saying some things about him.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So, thank you. So Roland, we are going to miss you. We know you're not really going away because I don't think you'll ever stop being what you've been here since, since the first day you got here. And, I think Mayor Graham probably maybe said it the best, which is unvarnished, in everything that you did. And that unvarnished part actually was your 100% dedication to the people of Calhoun. And, everything that you did here was focused on that, making sure that you represented well. And whether or not you were reelected or not, I know that everybody in this room knows that you absolutely represented the folks of Calhoun extremely well. And I like I said, I know you're not going away, and we'll get out to Calhoun sooner or later, or I'll get out to Calhoun sooner or later, and I'll make sure I look you up when I'm out there.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't decide what you were doing over there, so go ahead.
Well, I'll express my appreciation to Roland as well. There's no question in my mind that you have elevated the awareness of Calhoun to all of us and to people in the Colorado Springs community. And it's not necessarily always an easy thing to do with a big county and a big city to represent a smaller place like that and help all of us really understand more about, what is going on out in Callahan. I think you've done a spectacular job. And, an election is an election. But you're going to go back to doing other great things for Callahan. I know you're going to represent Callahan well some other way. I consider you a friend. I appreciate the comments you've made in our meetings here. I wish you the best. And I will be out in Callahan at a minimum for the El Paso County Fair multiple times. So I hope to see you there, and the best of luck to you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Roland, from the day you've walked on this board, you've been just such a breath of fresh air, and I really, really appreciate that. And you reached your hand out in friendship, and we had a lot of fun times together. And Callahan should be very proud of you. You represented them well, and you brought. I don't usually tear up. Why is he making me tear up? Doggone it! You represented your community extraordinarily well. They should be very proud of you, and your family's going to enjoy having you home probably a little bit more. But you were committed. You drove in for pre-meetings. I mean, it was amazing the amount of miles you probably put on your vehicle representing your city and coming in and taking care of them. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That the only thing I'm going to miss is all this fine reading you guys give me. every night
Yeah.
I do.
I know. You'll have to find something else to go to sleep by, huh? All right. Thank you very much.
Should we take a quick picture?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Yes.
All right. Come on down, everybody, and let's do a quick photo. All right, thank you, everyone. And that takes us on to public comments. Public comments can be made before or during the meeting. Public comments during the meeting is limited to 3 minutes and can be done at the meeting location or remotely by using the posted Microsoft Team links. Individuals are encouraged to notify the meeting organizer before the meeting with agenda item they would like to comment on. Public comments can be submitted before the meeting via email for distribution to the committee members. Do we have anyone online who would like to have public comment on something that is not on the agenda today?
So Madam Chair, I'll ask anyone who is online to please use the raise hand function. Let us know that you would like to provide public comment online. In the meantime, Madam Chair, we did receive one request for public comment, for in-person comment. We do have one person with their hand raised, so we can either do online first or let those people queue up while we do the in-person.
Okay, let's go ahead and get them queued up and we'll go ahead with the person who's in the meeting room. Gail, your mic's not on.
Gail Nels with Invita. We are excited to announce the launch of a new ride scheduling software, replacing a platform that was installed over 11 years ago. Ecolane is a software. It's an intelligent web-based system that improves the reserving, scheduling, and managing of rides, transportation. With these improved tools, we're expecting to see improved ride performance and access, more rides delivered, routes built more efficiently, drivers held to better on-time performance, and we're targeting an efficiency of about 15% improvement. Riders will receive a same-day call out to let them know we're 10 minutes away from their pickup window. We'd also like to recognize that this software platform was funded 100% by the Dollars to Digitize ARPA funds administrated by Colorado's Department of Healthcare Policy and Finance. Invita's intent with these funds was to streamline rides for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities as part of their long-term support services and Medicaid benefit, as well as improve transit and accessibility for older adults, mental health riders, low income, and others. We have an electronic data interchange that is less manual data entry and intervention for people working with us. There'll be greater regulatory compliance and audits will be streamlined, reducing administrative burdens on agencies like ourselves. And hopefully this model will be replicated across the state. We'd also like to recognize our longstanding partnership with Silver Key and Fountain Valley Senior Center. We share rides and best practices with mutual goals to serve our community better. Invita led the effort back in 2019 to merge the transit databases of Invita, Silver Key, and Fountain Valley. We spent days back then to understand and modify our operational practices to improve. We're making progress until COVID hit. But now we are able to, with this new software, we are, the three agencies are better aligned to meet the goals set forth in 2019 to deliver more rides to our community. Near future improvements of this software are more on-demand rider app. They can schedule rides and they can also see where their ride is. And they'll be able to look at this from the GPS location on their phones. So we'll also be inviting other agencies at PPACG boundaries to join us in this software, as well as other agencies around the state. So thank you. Any questions?
No, thank you. It is nice to get the messages. However, the accent calls you Invita.
They're working on that. I think they changed my name pronunciation. We'll work on it. Thank you, Sharon.
And Commissioner Vanderwerth had something also. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank you for the work that you do in our community here. I am such a huge fan of organizations and companies like yours that work in the private market to deliver goods and services for citizens. The fact that you're upgrading your technology to make that more efficient, and the fact that you're offering ride services for people that need to get to healthcare appointments and things like that, people that might have, for whatever other reason, might be challenged in being able to do that themselves. I just express my appreciation to you and Invita for doing it. So thank you so much for all of the work you do for the community.
Thank you. It's a privilege to work with them all.
Councilmember Donaldson, hang on, Gail, we're not done with you.
Not that I want to leave.
So Gail, have you started using this new software already?
Yes, sir. I come from a tech background, and so just this software costs over $250,000, and we went live yesterday. We've had some issues with some the calls out the night before. We did a great data crosswalk between the old software and the new software around the three agencies, but it's still in transition. We hired some great project managers from the private sector that are helping us deploy this. They've been on site, the software vendor they'll be on site 2 weeks now to deploy. It's going to be, yesterday was a little bumpy. Today, we're always seeing better on-time performance improvements as we retrain our drivers to look at things differently and our riders to look at things differently.
And I think you said there's a 15% efficiency increase.
Target, yes.
Target. And do you have dispatchers? What will that mean practically speaking? If it's 15% more efficient, is that, hey, we need fewer people to dispatch vehicles? We have, with the same number of vehicles, we can have essentially 15% more rides, or what does it mean?
We're looking to see better on-time performance in that. We're seeing more rides. We're looking at better management of those rides. Now with this GPS tracking, it's easier for our schedulers and dispatchers to look exactly what's happening. And it's more of a dynamic system than this scheduled lockstep, demand response kind of system, much more like a fluid environment that, oh, you're running late, this ride is going to be thrown over to another driver. So we're real hoping to see this. And I modeled this on in transit up the road in Boulder. Via Mobility has also using this software, and they have over time of their 6 months, they saw very firmly 15% increase. So I think we can match that.
And so it sounds like this, you use GPS with the old system. That wasn't the case.
We had some on the tablets, but it was not as easy to access, was not as reliable. So we bought all new tablets and the new, so better, faster throughput. So yes, they can look on their phones and their tablets now.
Well, great. And I'll join Commissioner Vanderwerf saying thank you for what you do for our community.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As someone who has a rider, you would get a call when the driver arrived. We're here. And if you weren't quite ready to go, then they might be sitting there waiting 5-7 minutes for you. This morning and yesterday morning, we got calls that said your driver will be there within the next 5 to 7 minutes. So that gave us time to make sure he brushed his teeth and got his coat on and everything. And so he was down at the front door. So I think that'll help increase your efficiencies there with everyone too.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have we hire people with compassion, and maybe they're sometimes a little too compassionate in that they wait for the riders. But I think we'd rather err on that side, but we do expect to see greater efficiencies in that manner. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. I look forward to figuring out how to use that app. Thank you. All right. We had some hands online.
Madam Chair, we did have one person with their hand raised. That person is able to unmute themselves and speak at this time.
Hi, thank you. If you're online, please state your name for the record and go ahead with your concern.
This is William Shaw, Mayor Pro Tem of the town of Rima. I was just wanting to speak out and update everybody. We've been going through a process for the last 5+ years on upgrading our sledge ponds and getting them relocated in a different area south of town here. And we're hoping to break ground in June and stay ahead of the required upgrades by the state. I think we've made a lot of progress with that, and pretty excited to see this all happen, and we're staying ahead of the curve, I hope. And we should have the project completed by the end of summer, and it's really a big deal for us. We've been working really hard for a number of years to get this all in process, going through grants and loans and engineering and getting all that coordinated. It's been quite the task, but we're finally hopefully breaking ground in June. I'm going to get this project underway.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate you calling in with that update. All righty. Anyone else online with comments? Do we have another hand up?
We do. It's a phone number ending in 8432. You should be able to unmute and provide your comment.
Please state your name for the record and go ahead and unmute.
For this individual, if you haven't already tried *5, should be able to unmute yourself in addition to what any other mute function you have on your device. We saw your hand go up again. Once again, you should be able to either do *5 or possibly *6. Looks like *5 might have been the raise hand function, but you're still showing as muted on our end, but you should be able to unmute.
Hello, this is Eric Eklund. Am I live?
You are.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. My name is Eric Eklund. My family owns Wedgewood Farms along Old Pueblo Road, 3 miles south of Fountain. I was invited by Mayor Thompson to join this call and just voice our neighborhood, essentially feedback toward the Powers extension. And first, I want to mention that we do applaud Powers and El Paso County for looking ahead with planning for the future for the growth that's definitely hitting southeast and south El Paso County. And I also really like the comments at the beginning of this about, hey, let's take a common sense approach to government and planning. There is a lot of open land still southeast of Colorado Springs, south of Fountain, south El Paso County. I realize a lot of it is ranch land, but it is open. There are not homes on it. And one of the proposals, the Echo 4 proposal, I think, for the Powers Extension Program runs south of Fountain and goes right across Old Pueblo Road, where there are about 75 to 100 homes. I am one of the businesses down there, but there's a number of businesses, a number of families. And so the common sense part of this is, why are we proposing running a major road project through where people already have their businesses, their livelihood, they live, instead of going south, not even that far south, another 2 miles south of my place, and it's open land across Old Pueblo Road, south of Clear Springs Ranch, and that could go right to I-25 if needed. I know part of the proposal is a new interchange at mile marker 125 south of Fountain, and we are not against a overpass there or a highway entry if the new proposed businesses on the west side of I-25 need access. That's fine. What we're against is putting a major road across our properties, our homes, along Old Pueblo Road south of Fountain. So we have met with the El Paso County Commissioners at a land use meeting. I know many of us have done public comment in part of the online public forum in February that closed, the end of February. We made comments, we participated, and we've also done a grassroots petition and filed it with the El Paso County Planning Commission that we are against the option E4. There were other options to the south. We're not against those, but just representing myself and my neighbors. Thank you for your time, and really that's the most of it.
Thank you, Mr. Eklund. Perfect. You have like 5 seconds left, so perfect. Thank you very much. All right.
Oh,
Is there
you're
anyone?
welcome. Okay.
Okay. Is there anyone else online?
Madam Chair, I do not see any other hands raised online.
Okay, because I'm seeing a handout here over
It's
here.
still up.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, thank you. All right. Anyone else in the room? All right, I will go ahead and close public comments and go on to item 3D, military installation reports. Do we have anybody online? Because we don't think we have anybody in the room.
Madam Chair, I don't recognize any of the names online as representing military installations. If that's an oversight on my end, I'll ask that they please use the raise hand function and let us know. But again, I don't recognize any of the names beyond staff or other presenters.
Yeah, and I think, Madam Chair, between Space Symposium and conference back in DC this week, Association of Defense Communities, they're probably all out of pocket this week, I suspect.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Out doing their jobs, huh? All right, that takes us on 4 consent items. We have 3 items on the consent agenda, A, B, and C. What would the board like to do with the consent agenda?
Move
Madam-
approval.
I'll second.
Roland's doing a third over there.
Oh, awesome. I won't take any more from you, Roland.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, that passes. That takes us on to action Item 5, action items. Item 5A, the South Powers Extension Corridor Study Update, John Liasados. And I believe Scott Asher is here also.
Just to, as a quick introduction, save most of the time for Mr. Asher, is PPACG has been involved in the South Powers study from the beginning. I believe there's two different committees. I can't remember the different names, but a technical committee that I've participated in, and then like a leadership committee or executive committee that Andy is a member of. So PPACG has been involved in the process, and at this point, it's coming to an end. So Scott will sort of go over the recommendation. Ultimately, why this is an action item is there has been a request for a letter of support for the recommendation from PPACG, a draft of which is in your packet. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Asher.
Thanks, John. Scott Asher with Wilson and Company. I'm the project manager for El Paso County representing El Paso County for the South Powers Extension Project. Is John mentioned, it is a consortium or a collaboration of El Paso County, Colorado Department of Transportation, Federal Highways, City of Fountain, PPACG, and the City of Colorado Springs, looking at the long-term extension of Powers from Mesa Ridge Parkway to a new connection on I-25 south of Fountain. This was part of the original study that was done in 2000, and a lot of the original planning that started back in the mid 60s actually for the Powers connection around the east side of the city. We are asking for a letter of support, hopefully, for the project and for the recommendations. From a schedule standpoint, we started back in early 2022 with the initial PEL study, which is a planning and environmental linkages study. We're wrapping that up here and hoping to have a final report and to FHWA here by the end of May. So as part of the recommendation process, we went through a lot of alternatives, looked at previous alternatives that were considered, developed new alternatives, and went through a pretty rigorous process for evaluation criteria and evaluating all the different corridors. The recommendation coming out of the technical team and supported by the executive team was to do a phased approach of the corridor, with an initial phase being the blue line, the green to the blue, which is alternative E3. This actually ties to a new interchange at I-25 around milepost 125, with the ultimate long-term connection extending down south to a new connection at around milepost 121 or the Pikes Peak International Raceway area. We also are looking at the corridor preservation being 330 feet for that initial phase and about 380 feet for the long-term phase, to allow for both the highway connections as well as additional space for multimodal or utility corridors, things like that along the corridor that we can incorporate into the overall transportation solution. We did look at sort of a phasing plan of what we see sort of happening over the next 30 to 50 years. And with probably the biggest things, looking at identifying what those projects are and the logical prioritization, obviously funding dependent, and as things move forward, starting sort of at the north end of the corridor with looking at the interchange at Mesa Ridge and Powers as it extends south. Also looking at priorities in the new interchange area at I-25 at milepost 126 or 125. And then sort of continuing from the south to from the north to the south, implementing the rest of the corridor. A lot of that is dependent on funding. Obviously, there is no construction funding at this stage as we move the project forward, but really looking at sort of going from the north toward the south to make that connection overall. wanted to sort of get you up to speed on the public engagement that we've done over the past several months with the recommendation. We've sent over 200 certified letters out to property owners in the area of the corridor. 74 property owners contacted the project team to meet with. We had 45 one-on-one meetings with individual property owners between October 10th and November 2nd of last fall. We met with HOA group along Old Pueblo Road on October 18th. Had a stakeholder virtual meeting that had 20 different organizations represented, as well as the virtual public open house that we did close in mid-February, and now we're addressing comments and concerns with that. One thing I will say is that we did, after the public comment period and meeting with a lot of folks, we have done some refinements to the alignments. The location of where the connections are on I-25 remain basically the same, but we have tried to modify the alignments to minimize impacts to any private property, knowing that we can't, eliminate private property impacts. It is a new alignment, but we're trying to minimize that as much as we possibly can. So we've made some shifts in the E3 to try and avoid residential properties as much as possible, as well as even on the H3 alignment going down to the south, trying to minimize the impacts on the ranches as it goes through there as well. Next steps, overall, as we try to wrap up here the study, we're trying to get that, like I said, get that submitted and wrapped up and submitted to FHWA for final review and acceptance and approval here later this spring. And then really becomes looking forward and moving forward into corridor preservation, design, and really identifying funding. There is funding available in the PPRTA program from El Paso County and the City of Colorado Springs that will help further the initialize the design process and start working through some more of the details on these corridors. But there is no construction money available at this stage, and that will be one of the big efforts that will be coming through at the conclusion to start identifying that. With that, any questions?
All right, I'm sure this group's going to have a lot of questions. I find it amazing that it's been looked at for close to 60 years. I find that amazing. And you're looking at another 20 years before it's completed. And people, that's definitely a government working at slow speed project. Councilman O'Donnell.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. And sir, the gentleman who called in, you probably heard his citizen comment and his concerns. Is he aware of the adjustments you reported you've made to the road?
Yes. There is a more detailed map on the website that we've presented with the public open house materials to show in more detail where that corridor goes. And so I believe Mr. Eklund is aware of that, but I'm not 100% sure that he has reviewed that.
Okay. And is there anything you'd like to add to his concerns? I'm sure it's shared by other homeowners down there that why can't you just go farther south and get away from their properties?
It's like any public project. We move farther south, we'll get away from their properties, but we're impacting other properties. There isn't any area really in the corridor that we wouldn't impact somebody's property in some way, some form. What we have done is the unfortunate thing is Mr. Eklund's property. It is all in the floodplain. It's he's got about, I believe, about 30 acres there that we're trying to minimize what we're doing, but we'll be going over the top of it since it's down in the creek. And so we'll have viaduct that would be going over the top of that. And there's one property on the east side of Old Pueblo Road that also would be going along the south end of that property, just north of the Hanover Fire Department. And is what the plan is right now. So it wouldn't impact any actual residential properties themselves. but more, it is more open property.
Okay, thank you, and I'll be following the lead of our mayor from that area and the county commissioners who know this in better detail than I do. Thanks.
Commissioner Vanderworth.
Okay, there we go. So I noticed on the map, right, you had the two options shown there. I know there were other options also considered, but if I saw it correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think those two are actually aligned with the existing interchanges on I-25. Is that correct?
The H3, the one on the south end, is aligned with where there's existing interchange. The one on the north is actually just north of the Ray Nixon interchange, about a mile north of Ray Nixon between the two, between 85 and the Ray Nixon interchange. So it is a new one, a new location.
Okay. Well, that answers the question actually before I even asked the question. And the question that I was going to ask is, it kind of looked to me like they were aligned with two intersections, and I was wondering if CDOT was open to, any considerations for a completely new interchange. But I think the answer is yes, because the northern one actually does that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Just a couple things, because I did hear your presentation my third time around on this one. I was so lucky. I happened to be at PPRTA last week. One of the comments you made was that how to best maximize the corridor, and that might be with a managed lane.
That it's possible in the future. I know with a lot of the freeways and the highway systems in Colorado, and they're looking at ways to help fund and manage traffic congestion. That is, that's something that could be considered. And we're not precluding that with the typical section that's being developed for the corridor. We're not proposing that at this stage.
Right, I understand it, but you can make a lane managed and then unmanage it, but you can't open it up and then tighten it back up again, if I remember correctly from our previous conversations. Is that correct, Andy?
We need some help on that one, either from Scott or John.
I just remember when we were going through this with the gap corridor.
Okay. I'm not sure.
Okay.
If I understand that question correctly, if it is a managed lane, once you've let the genie out of the bottle, can you stuff the genie back in? And the answer is not really, no. Once it becomes a managed lane, it'll be there. I think one of the things is that, again, the team has been very careful over the years to make sure that they have not excluded any potential future funding or ownership of the roadway. So if this were to become state highway, whatever, right, one of the things that CDOT currently has a policy on is that managed lane. So by having that option available, and you correct me if I've misunderstood this over the years, that having that option open, you leave the possibility for this to start its life as an El Paso County roadway, and then eventually at some point CDOT could take over. But if CDOT's going to take over, they've got these sort of lists of things they look for, and one of which would be managed lanes, as well as some of the other sort of GHG concerns. And I think, again, the study team has done an excellent job of making sure they have not precluded any sort of future ownership or payment or funding is a better word. And so that's why it says there's room for a managed lane, but it's not anything that they're recommending. I don't think it's anything El Paso County would put in, but it's something that would be available should the project grow into be a Department of Colorado CDOT, thank you, project. Am I?
Yes. No, you're right on, John. That's perfect.
Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Can I have behind the post again or no?
Commissioner Vanderworth.
Yes, thank you very much. I would in fact ask CDOT to actually really model this or help model it. The reason why I mention this is with one of the former CDOT directors, our El Paso County commissioners were expressing concern over what transpired with us with regard to the managed lane in the gap. To be honest, I felt like I was duped a little bit because CDOT was asking us for money and we offered the money, and literally the day after we voted to approve that money, CDOT then started telling us there was going to be a managed lane. And so I went up to the CDOT director at the time, which was director prior to the current director, and asked if I could talk to their modelers to determine why the managed lane was the most efficient design for that highway. When I went over to the modelers, they told me they had in fact not modeled the highway. They had been directed by the Transportation Commission to put in a managed lane. So they were following the direction of the Transportation Commission, and they had not modeled it. So at that point, being a graduate of the School of Industrial Engineering from Purdue University, and the School of Industrial Engineering from Purdue is in fact the modeling agent for the Indiana Department of Transportation, I asked if we could get a PhD student to model the gap to determine what would be actually the most efficient highway configuration. And now I asked them to model to optimize safety, aggregate safety, and aggregate productivity. Productivity meaning a design that would get cars through that highway the fastest possible. And what they discovered in that modeling of the gap that was done by a PhD student at Purdue University is that the managed lane suboptimizes safety and suboptimizes productivity, both of them being sacrificed to meet the CDOT requirement of what was called guaranteed reliability. So what I discovered in that process is that politics put the managed lane into the highway, and modeling to get to the best highway design was not used. So I would ask CDOT to actually, no kidding, model different highway design configurations. By the way, what's going on in the state of Indiana, as they have discovered because of Purdue's modeling of Indiana's highways, that the managed lanes that they had in Indiana were actually suboptimizing safety and productivity. So Indiana has in fact removed their managed lanes from their highways. And when we keep adding managed lanes, it leaves me with the impression that we are still about 40 years behind the technology of better highways in the state of Colorado, while other states are actually getting rid of managed lanes. Now, rather than, make a specific point about whether there should be a managed lane here or not have a managed lane here, I would just ask CDOT to actually, no kidding, model any future highway using aggregate safety and aggregate productivity as the design criteria. And then if they actually model that correctly and model it well, and the outcome of that is a managed lane, then so be it. However, I will tell you, I don't think that's where that modeling will actually end up. And I won't get into the rationale behind it, but I could explain it to anybody further as to why that suboptimizes safety and productivity. But we'll leave it at that. So what I don't want to have happen here is, once again, us kind of tiptoeing around the conversation of managed lanes. And then when we get down to building a road, have it rammed down our throats, and we actually suboptimize what a highway should be doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vanderwerth. Anyone else? Oh, Commissioner Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as you look forward in this project, and in light of Commissioner Vanderwerf's comments, is the goal of this from the county, should it be constructed, is to, as quickly as possible, relieve their maintenance responsibility by having CDOT take it over, which opens up this opportunity for a managed lane? Or, what is it exactly? Is there a specified goal for future ownership of this road?
I
really don't know.
I don't want to speak for CDOT. Has there been there has been discussions, ultimately that Powers Boulevard, would continue as State Highway 21 down to I-25, of which then there would, like John said, there'd be a whole list of things if they're going to take on a new road, that there would be, that they would want to be giving up things as well, right? So right now, it is a county project. It is a county road until it's implemented, until some point, those discussions with CDOT about doing a swap similar to what was done with the original Powers Boulevard, right? For Academy Boulevard and Nevada Avenue. I think we're all part of that swap for CDOT to take on Powers Boulevard from Mesa Ridge north to, I guess, north of Woodman at this point up to 83 was the original agreement and land swap or roadway swap that they took that on, and then the city of Colorado Springs and El Paso County took on other roads in their system. Namely, I know South Academy for sure as well. So those are discussions that will come to me far in the future. Right now, we're trying to get a corridor lined up of where it needs to go and be able to keep that discussion and planning moving forward.
Okay. This is just super important. The vision I think a lot of people have for this is making sure we get the easements and everything set out ahead of time, so we're not doing what's going on the North Power Doors corridor extension, where it's not an express lane any longer on North Powers in many, many ways. And this needs to stay an express lane. And so this is super important that we do our best with the knowledge we have today, because I believe that's what everybody does, right? We do our best with the knowledge we have today to make it so that when these developments are coming in, we can say to them, this is going to someday be an expressway through here, potential as, state highways. So, because the developers, like all of us, if we own land, right, we want to build up to this close as we can, but we don't want to be having to go back and do those things later on. So getting this alignment right is super important to Fountain, and I hope it is to, most of our neighbors around us and Colorado Springs, because you're, possibly down in that area too. And so I just think it's super, super important. And we don't have the millions and millions to go back and be redoing overpasses and things like we're doing right now. We shouldn't. We should think forward and try the best we can to our ability. I think the one thing that I did get out of the RTA CAC presentation was I've been at many, many of these meetings, and I always thought the E and the H were an or, and the E and the H are and. So there are both of those intersections coming. It's not one or the other. And I don't know if Mr. Eklund's still hanging on, and so I want to make sure that they understood that really well too. And so the one that comes out with the blue line there at the top would be the first one done potentially within 20 years, just arbitrarily say. And then the green one that goes further down to the south to 121 would be more like 30 plus years out in the future. So whatever is done is going to have great impact on those property owners down there in any way. Just the amount of traffic. If you haven't driven down Old Pueblo Road, south of the city of Fountain, I encourage you to get off the freeway at exit 128, go the other side of the freeway, and just drive down Old Pueblo Road. It's a very narrow 2-lane road, no shoulders, nothing, and it goes literally through in one case, at least right through someone's farm. I mean, their house is on one side of Old Pueblo and their barn is on the other side of Old Pueblo. So it's a beautiful older rural area, and I understand why they love to live down there, but the development is coming down that way, and we need to figure out the best way to what's the word I want? Look at the impacts on everyone and everything that's going to have in that area. And I do have a hand raised online. Okay.
Madam Chair, that is Josh Palmer. He's a county engineer for El Paso County. If you're interested in calling on him.
Yes, great. Go ahead, Mr. Palmer.
Good morning. Yeah, Josh Palmer, county engineer. I'd like to thank Scott and apologize for not being there in person, but thanks Scott for his great presentation. I've heard this presentation probably a dozen times now. Feel like I always learn something. So I couldn't say it any better than the way Scott said it. And Mayor Thompson, you're 100% correct. This is just the first step in a very long process, and proper planning is essential to make sure that we're successful 20, 30 years into the future. And I just wanted to, really what I just want to highlight is the next step in this process, which is to start working on design and property acquisition to preserve these corridors, is an approved PPRTA 3A list project. So we are already planning for the next steps, kind of in this long drawn out process over the next several decades. And that's it. That's it. I appreciate the time.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, what would the board like to do with action 5A?
I will move approval of this item. Is
Okay.
that, or is it this, was this information only?
No, it's an action item.
Okay, I
Yep,
would move approval.
of accepting the, make sure I say it right.
Powers extension corridor study.
Yep, accepting
Mhm.
the study and a letter of support, I believe it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. That motion passes, and I do encourage the people whose properties are affected by that to stay at the table. Don't give up. A lot of things can change in 5-10 years down the road, so please stay in the process with us. Thank you very much. Okay, that takes us on to item 5B, legislative update. Jared.
Good morning, everyone. Jared Werner, Public Information Officer at Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. So we bless you. Good gracious. So this is as we have about a month left in the legislative session now, believe it or not. As you may remember from the first meeting, we did have a lot of activity early on in the session. Now that the long bill has been introduced, things are slowing down a little bit while that goes through the process. So a lot of the bills that you see in the status sheet and the attachment have been included or are stuck in the appropriations process. So it has made for relatively quick meetings the last couple of weeks. If you aren't already coming and you'd like to come, every Monday at 8:30, we hang out and talk about new legislation. Decide whether it is a PPACG issue, and if it is, what kind of position we want to take on that. And since the last time I briefed the board, the committee has recommended 4 new positions that we've outlined in the memo. Support for one bill, House Bill 24-1366, Sustainable Local Government Community Planning. We are supporting 2 amendments to the long bill. One of them we've listed that is J19, and the other one, which has come out, is J130. Both those would appropriate $6.1 million to state funding for senior services, which was not included in the long bill. That has gone through both the House and the Senate side and is currently in conference committee upon adjournment today. The committee is also recommending opposing one bill, that is Senate Bill 24-184, support surface transportation infrastructure development, the rail bill, as you might have otherwise heard it call. I want to express gratitude to Mayor Graham. He did a fantastic job of testifying on that bill when it was heard in committee a couple weeks ago. And the committee is recommending monitoring one bill, Senate Bill 24-195, protect vulnerable road users. This is a reintroduction of a bill that was postponed indefinitely earlier this session. The initial bill was a creation of a new enterprise. This new bill does not involve that enterprise. It takes existing funds, but there's a little bit of let's dig around a little bit more and let's monitor this bill. We were in a monitor position on the first bill earlier this session. That was one that was introduced last week, so that was new from the original material sent out. Happy to take any questions. We were successful in getting a couple other bills that we were monitoring, either signed or postponed, to definitely have outlined those in your memo.
Any questions? Commissioner Vanderwerth.
Yes, I would maybe just be interested in some clarification on 1366. As it was originally introduced, I guess it didn't have a fiscal note, or it did, but then the long bill did not include that funding. So that's what the amendment is, to try to get it included in the long bill. Is that
No,
correct?
so I'm sorry, though, so we've got the amendments we're looking at are for the long bill, so those two amendments are for state funding for senior services. The sustainable local government community planning, that was one that, if I'm remembering the bill correctly, was put together primarily by CML. We were part of that stakeholder process, and it essentially allows new opportunities for governments, basically provides grant opportunities. If I remember in this bill, right, there's a couple of planning ones.
Okay,
I'm
well,
remembering right.
maybe just, I'm sorry to interrupt, but on 1366, is it funded or not funded in the long bill?
That I don't know specifically whether that fiscal note was in there or not.
Because I do know there are a lot of bills that have been passed through committee that were in fact supported, but then the long bill doesn't even come close to having enough money to fund those bills. So they've got to decide which bills get funded and don't get funded. And there will be a bunch of bills that had made it through committee, might even make it through a floor vote, but will end up not being placed into law because the funds are not available from the long bill to do it. So that's what I'm trying to figure out is what's the status of 1366 with regards to its funding.
And I know we've got several bills that are going to be in that position. That's why, if you see a lot of our bill status sheets are stuck in appropriations, and so I would anticipate there's going to be several of those bills, that one included, that are going to be in that position.
I think there's a lot of bills, including maybe some bills that we support here at PPACG, that are at risk for not going forward because there's not enough money in the appropriations bill to fund them. And we should be monitoring that. And to the ones that we have an interest in supporting, we should be paying pretty close attention to that because maybe there'll be an opportunity to testify about trying to encourage the legislature to get them added into the long bill. But when they do that, of course, they're going to have to think about where the money will come from and there'll be something else that won't be able to fund. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to do it if we support those bills.
And I just looked up the fiscal note on that one. Compared to some other fiscal notes, it's relatively minor, 300,000.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So of all the other bills that we're either monitoring, either opposing, supporting, or just monitoring, that is one of the lower fiscal notes that I've seen so far.
And it looks like it is back in committee on Tuesday, the 16th.
Yep.
So, okay. Or yeah, Tuesday.
And that's when I believe has been, I think this is now the third delay on that bill. I think it was supposed to be heard last Tuesday and then yesterday and now next Tuesday.
Okay.
That's the one I think we've been working with the other metropolitan planning organizations, Dr. Cog and the North Front Range MPO, trying to clarify that has some potential, but it had some other things that we were concerned about that were attached to it. It's that one, I think.
I think we're thinking of a different one.
1366.
Again, there's two planning ones and I keep getting them confused.
Yeah.
This is that one that we've been closely working with the bill sponsors on. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. It seems like there's some questions about 1366 and I'm part of the legislative, committee, but there's some meetings where I wasn't able to be involved in the whole thing. And there's even the language in this that I'm reading through the bill summary. It's a little less than something I feel like I want to support at the moment. Perhaps this one we should just pull off our list that we vote on today and bring it back next month, or well, session will be over, but put it in a monitor stance unless Andy, Jared have a tight summary of it and why this is a good thing for PPACG and something that we should support. If there's any others that feel that's appropriate, it looks like maybe perhaps Mayor Dixon feels that's appropriate.
Yeah, I looked through my notes and I didn't really see a lot through my notes on it. So since there's questions, I think it probably would be appropriate to pull it off the support list right now. And, if we need to get additional information on it, we'll try to get additional information on it.
And I apologize as I have reviewed my notes, that is 100% on me. in our status sheet, we have 1366 as the amendment position.
Well, I do have a hand online.
Yeah.
So I do have a hand online. Mayor LaKind?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. If I could speak for Monument and Fountain, our Legislative Review Committee has come out in opposed position on this bill, 1366. So if you were to leave this on the list of things to approve, I would have to vote no.
Do you remember why we had it on? I'm looking at my notes, but it's trying hard to.
Yeah,
Find
I
them.
think part of it was the unfunded, the mandate, the fiscal note. I don't have any notes in front of me about it. I just pulled up our weekly tracker and it shows oppose. So we must have deliberated about it to get to that point.
I think our concern was having to include a climate action element in different reports that we had to give to CDOT. So it just become another unfunded mandate for something for our unmanned, short-staffed planning departments to try to get done.
Oh,
And
do you
I
have a
will
planning
say-
department?
At least today.
I don't have one.
And I will say, as part of that stakeholder process, and now that I apologize, there's only been 600 bills this session. So going back to 1366, we saw the same elements as well, and that's why they've been doing the stakeholder process a little backwards. They introduced the bill and then start the stakeholder process, if that's a good way to say it. And so we noticed the climate action part. There's also been some definitions on the growth corridors part, which we're trying to just get a better understanding of what exactly the bill sponsors are trying to accomplish. We've been told several times both of these sponsors, specifically Representative Brown, is very amenable to amendments.
We've been hearing that for a while.
We have been, but this is like I said, those are some things that we have noticed as part of the amendment process, and that. But to the same point, those climate action elements, I think our feedback was to strike it completely.
Okay, Commissioner Stone?
And with apologies to the committee, because I was out of town last week, I think perhaps when this bill was discussed, because we didn't discuss it this week, for 1366. But from what Jared was saying is that what's being presented to us in print is actually inaccurate, that it was an amend position which was being recommended.
Correct. But that was my fault on.
Right,
when I
and
was going through it.
specifically, did we have specific amendments we were seeking? Was it to remove the climate elements from the planning part? Was that what we were seeking?
That was one of them. We had 3 different ones that I'm going off of memory a little bit, but that was to strike the climate action pieces completely. Another one was to identify what the growth corridors mean, and more specifically, that those are only applied to state highways. And that's what we have heard from the sponsors, was that was their intent. That was not in the bill. And that if you're only going to do that, it is only going to be for state highways. And there's a third element that I'm blanking on at the moment, that we have been working closely with CDOT specifically, as well as the other MPOs, specifically North Front Range and DRCOG, to address.
To clarify the definition of the urbanized areas, I think, and how those would be
Yes, which part of the
impacted
yeah,
here.
which part of those highways? It is a weird bill, because it would only apply to the gap that is from the urban area to the MPO boundary. So anything that's already within the urbanized area would not be part of this, and I think North Front Range is also in that position of, like, you're looking at some relatively short segments of state highway to do these plans on for, again, relatively short sections. And so as part of that process, trying to identify what exactly all that looks like, what are we trying to, or not what are they trying to accomplish? Is it travel demand? Is it just growth in general? Is it interchanges? And so that's kind of why we've been in that amend position, because it still gives us a seat at the table to have those conversations.
Okay, and we did hear from our lobbyist, Tanya Bland, that there are certain bills that they feel like are beginning to be slow rolled intentionally by the majority party. Seeing this one be now delayed a couple of times into April 16th with a lot of question marks being raised about it. any thoughts at all about whether this is one of those with only 25 days left in the session?
It should go back to the drawing boards if we had that as a recommended action item. There's too much included in that one bill that doesn't relate to one another. I mean, the climate action thing, as we mentioned, should be stripped out altogether, but the rest of it that applies to transportation corridors, like the previous item on the South Powers corridor, I think it's trying to make sure that we don't start building up too much stuff on new corridors without thinking about what the future travel flow is going to be on those. So CDOT's trying to get a handle on those areas outside of the urbanized area, but within our MPO boundary, how do we do a better job managing travel demand along those very corridors? But it doesn't say that. We hear what they're saying, but then the language that we're reading doesn't quite match up. So it really does need to be rewritten. So,
And I realize these are normally conversations that happen at our committee meeting, but the CML, are you aware, do they have a position on this? So you mentioned it was perhaps the CML initiative. I'm not sure a lot of times your own initiatives end up being something else once they get introduced.
Well, I built, this would be one probably that, like Fountain Monument took an opposed position, obviously, so we wouldn't agree with CML's position. So I don't know, maybe Mitch can look it up really quick because he's at home. I just want to make some points out on page 5 of the bill when it talks about the climate action element. Of course, there's the push for electric vehicles and charging stations. And then they want to get into forcing waste management companies to get into more recycling. There's also imposing vehicle miles traveled fees, encouraging employer commute programs, and developing bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, which is in every bill. But they want to reduce per capita vehicle miles traveled, building energy use and emissions from conversion of natural and working lands by updating local land use codes. So there's a lot of stuff in here, including protecting and restoring the tree canopy. That not quite sure what they have to do with the entire bill, and I'm not sure they can get all that wish list done for $300,000. So I would support.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
In light of what you just said, I don't even know how that meets the criteria of a single subject for a bill.
Right.
Yeah, in my humble opinion, this just sounds like a bill to try to get a whole bunch of stuff done and thrown into a single bill. And it seems to me like maybe there's an element or two that we would say is fine, but there are several elements in here that I would tell you I would have a problem with. I would recommend we actually change the position on this and oppose this bill.
If that's a motion.
Is that a motion?
Second.
Do you consider that a motion?
I consider that a motion. Thank you.
I would second Eric Stone.
Would the motion be to accept the rest of the report, or do you want to handle this one, just this one bill separately? What's the best way to
I'll do
handle
that either way that the board sees fit.
probably separate, that would be cleaner.
it? Okay, so let's pull off HB 241366 and just vote on that. We have a motion on the floor to change our support position from that to oppose. Any further deliberation on that motion?
I do have one. This is a question really for Jared. Jared, there are really only 3 positions a lobbyist can take, right? Support, oppose, or amend. There's not support with an amendment.
Correct. Yeah, and monitor would be that 4th one.
Or monitor.
Or
that's right.
monitor,
That's
yeah.
right.
But yeah, no, and so a lot of times you'll see CML and other groups still do like support to amend or those kinds of things, but it's filed as an amend.
But yeah, you can't, that's not a block you check. You have to check one of those 4. So you either support it or you amend it. Support with amend is something we say, but it's not an actual status. So, but with all that said, I support opposing it.
Okay. There's something? Okay. Not seeing any hands online. Okay,
And Madam Chair, just as a point of clarification, because I got 2 bills mixed up. The CML bill that I thought this was is actually Senate Bill 174,
okay.
which is a Kirkmeyer bill. So this one was not CML. This one was CDOT, the one that we're voting on right now, 1366. Just want to make sure we clarify all the pieces.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Gardine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In Boulderman, they went to when they got bicycles and stuff, that kind of stuff involved in the roadways there. They modeled those roads like Stan was talking about. And I think these people just want to do a glossy over all the top of that, maybe get around that. And I don't think that's a good idea. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further deliberation? Okay, just to restate it, the motion on the floor is to change our position from support of HB 241366 to oppose. We've had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you. All right. And that takes us then to the rest of the report. Okay,
I would move the rest of the report. So we are supporting an amendment on the long appropriation bill. And we're opposing Senate Bill 24-184, and we're monitoring Senate Bill 195.
And I'll second that. Dave Donaldson.
can we have a motion and a second? Is there any further deliberation? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. Really, really good discussion. I cannot wait for May 9th.
Well, just for the record, I proposed that El Paso County Commissioners, we do a proclamation on the day the session adjourns. Celebrating that
Completing down
day.
front with like a hoedown dance or something,
Yeah.
you know?
Madam Chair, I think on that day we should have a meet-in barbecue.
Oh, there you go. Let me know when and where. Okay. All righty. That takes us to item 5C that hopefully will not be as controversial, huh? The employee handbook updates. And I would like to thank everybody on the board and the staff who worked on this. A lot of changes and updates needed to be done, and just things rearranged and moved around. And thank you for everybody taking your time to do that. So thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you to the board and Madam Chair. Sherry Hoffman, HR Generalist with PPACG. We did come to the board in February about updating our handbook as it's a little outdated just with so many federal and state changes that have been made of late. I would like to thank the committee that did help review the handbook, who was Mayor LaKine, Councilmember Donaldson, Commissioner Williams, Mayor Dixon, and Commissioner Stone, and also many meetings with Andy and Carol as well beforehand. So the two probably biggest changes were that we did change our sick leave payout in our handbook. Currently, our handbook states that employees get paid out 25% of their sick leave. And so in our handbook, we have changed that to where after employees start after July 1st, we will no longer be paying out sick leave, but any employee that has started prior to July 1st will continue, we will honor that payout going forward. And we also proposed Juneteenth as one of our holidays for our organization. It is very important to our employees, that holiday, and it is also recognized by state and federal. So we obviously made other changes to the handbook, which I tried to list out the top changes. But we are just proposing that our updated handbook gets approved.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? I know our staff, I submitted the one comment to you that they made. So yeah. Just
Yes,
getting
absolutely. The one
the
line
acronym. Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate their time going through that. Yes.
I did just have one comment, and I thought this was great. The staff, Andy and Sherry and Carol, actually met with all of the PPACG staff to go over the new handbook already, so that they're aware of the changes before we approve it. So they even got some staff input there.
Great. Thank you. All right. Seeing no questions, what would the board like to do with this?
Move
Make
to
a motion
approve the
to
handbook.
approve.
Go on ahead.
Go ahead, Roland.
I second, I guess.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor for approval of item 5C, the employee handbook. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Takes us on to item 6A, and we're under information items now. Active transportation plan from Jason O'Brien.
Good morning. Thank you. So over the last year or so, PPACG has been preparing these individual modal plans that feed into our 2050 long-range transportation plan. So that would be things like the freight study, various safety-related efforts, and now the active transportation plan. Active transportation plans being broadly defined as walking, biking, rolling, or using micro-mobility devices like scooters, e-scooters. Some of these modes have their own very distinctive issues and opportunities, so it's hard to just toss them in with all the other modes and really get meaningful results out of that. So having these individual modal plans can offer a much greater level of clarity in terms of projects, issues, getting our thoughts together as a region, things like that. The previous active plan was completed in 2015, and we all know a lot's changed in the last almost 10 years. And it was thought that the lead up to the 2050 long-range transportation plan was sort of an opportune moment to do the next update for active transportation planning. Just kind of seemed to make sense. A little sidebar about plan requirements. While this project does use state and federal funds, thank you to CDOT for providing our matching funds on this project. This is a voluntary effort with broad discretion for the region to conduct this project in the way that it sees fit. So it's not something that's very laden with requirements. Work began on the active transportation plan last fall. The Olson engineering firm was hired to lead the effort. They have a lot of experience. So far, we've conducted a great stakeholder process, generated existing conditions report, and now we're getting close to the midpoint of the project. The project team thought it would be great to check in with this board and just make sure that we're on the true path. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kyle McLaughlin from our Olson consultant team.
Thanks, Jason. Let me share my screen. And then can you let me know that you are seeing a PowerPoint slide?
Affirmative.
Okay, perfect. All right, so appreciate the time. Jason kind of started to talk through really what the plan is. The rest of this time, I'm going to talk a little bit about the role. I'll go into some of the details about the stakeholder and public input. I'll briefly touch on the draft vision and goals that we had put out. And then walk through some of the next steps that Jason was just talking about. We're looking to identify projects and regional priorities, and I would like a little bit of your feedback as we prepare to do that. So briefly, the role of the active transportation plan is to leverage and coordinate with the ongoing LRTP efforts to capture a vision of the modal network, the active network in the region. To establish desired connectivity, safety, comfort, and equity, identify investments that meet desired performance, support the project decision-making and prioritization at the local level, and then provide tools to compete for funding. And then the last role is not to supplant or replace any local plans or initiatives. This plan is really meant to highlight the local plans and make sure we're connected and serving a regional purpose. We've conducted over a dozen stakeholder interviews, 40 plus, 50 plus participants in those. The key takeaways were safety, everything from on trails, crime, perception of crime, safety of the users themselves, connectivity, making sure that everybody is able to get to where they want to go, the destinations that are desirable. A key takeaway from the stakeholder input was communication between departments in a city and between cities. Making sure that everybody's on the same page as we start to put projects together. And then there was a big desire for regional guidelines and a common language for, when you say a trail, what does that mean? Does it mean, we make sure it means the same thing in Fountain, in Manitou, in Colorado Springs, so that everybody has a common language and understands each other. As for the general public, we've had a survey open for a little over a month now. We have about 390 responses as of yesterday, and we did push this to be open until the 19th of April. So we're still receiving input. I've got up here a picture of the map. So there's two different ways to provide input. There's a survey, which is where that 390 responses come from, and then a map option where we've gotten lots of input, 60 over 60 strengths, 229 opportunities, and 512 weakness points across the region. We all know everybody likes to point out where the issues are, and that's kind of expected from engagement. But it also provides us with some great information as we start to look at how do we fix and how do we connect and what are important places for people. This input will be really valuable. The project has a project website on PPACG's webpage. It's just under the transportation tab and then walk, bike, ride. So if you Google PPACG active plan, this also pops up. I'll go ahead and read off the vision here. The draft vision is the Pikes Peak Regional Active Transportation and Roadway Systems will comfortably, safely, and efficiently accommodate bicycle and pedestrian transportation. Linking of local and regional attractions will make the region a world-class bicycle and pedestrian destination. Walking and bicycling will become common, enjoyable, and viable transportation and recreational choice that will promote active living and a high quality of life in Colorado's Pikes Peak region. So that's a nice, fluffy planner language that everybody can agree with, hopefully. If you have any comments on it, any wordsmithing, I'm happy to receive that. And then some high-level goals are to build on the momentum that the region has. So that's preserving existing trails, engaging advocates, and leveraging the things that are already happening in the region. Improve safety includes safe routes to school, encouraging youth to walk and ride to school, increasing trail visibility, connectivity. That's create quality connections between communities, between live, work, play, learn destinations, and regional destinations. And then as well as providing access across all socioeconomic communities. And then the last big goal is education and training. And that's to highlight the value, the economic value of bicycling and pedestrian facilities, and as well as the roles and responsibilities of users and non-users of the network. So that's kind of everything, all the outreach that we've done, and those goals very closely aligned to the stakeholder outreach that we did. Next, I want to kind of walk through the network.
We do have a question real quick.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Donaldson.
Yeah, the question comes from, I think it was slide 5, and it had all the little dots of strengths and weaknesses.
Sure.
What is a strength? What is a weakness?
Yep. And so we left that a little subjective to the person putting in. Each one of these dots can have comments with them. So many of them do have, like they've got a weakness at an intersection, and then they've got a comment about this is a dangerous intersection for a pedestrian, or there's also options to add, a bicycle or pedestrian comment specific to each one of these as well. So many, I can't tell you exactly how many, but many of them do have subsequent comments defining what the person inputting meant in their point.
And then on the fluffy vision,
yeah,
the idea that cycling will become common, what does that mean? What does common mean to you? What percentage is common?
Yeah, so go ahead.
Or perhaps this isn't your vision, so you don't really want to defend it, but I'm a former cycle commuter, bike commuter. It's not going to become, well, it depends on how you define common, but it's not going to become common for some very, very practical reasons in Colorado Springs. But I'm curious to know what that means.
Yeah, I would definitely say that, this is just a visionary statement. There's no, time frame in the future that this is standing on, whether it's 2040 or 2050 or anything, but just the vision being that seeing a bicyclist as yourself, going to work will become more common, if nothing else. Maybe no strict definition for the word common or modal split really implied, but just that it will become a, an option that is easily accessible and usable by more and more of the region's population.
Okay, I'll let you finish it up, and then maybe I'll have a question at the end. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Okay, so the next couple of slides here are a few maps that I want to kind of just walk through, and then I'll ask you maybe some questions as well. So this first map is just the existing network. It shows the trails, the on-street facilities, the bike lanes throughout the region. And as you can tell, many of them are concentrated in Colorado Springs, and then we've got a few throughout Fountain and Manitou and each of the other member jurisdictions. I suppose this is a good time to kind of take a step back and say that this plan is focused on the MPO boundary, not the COG boundary, and that's kind of dictated by where the funds come from. So we do have some coordination with COG members, but the primary focus of this plan is within the MPO boundary. I want to kind of contrast this existing network and the next map here, which is the proposed network from all the local plans. So this is the bike plans, the trail master plans, the open space plans. So we took all the information from as many of those as we could get and as many of those as we could digitize. And you can probably tell there's a stark difference between the network in the existing versus the proposed. So that is one of the tasks that this plan wants to go forward with, is defining what of these local proposed plans and projects are, regionally significant, and how do we make a regional network, and then how do we, group or prioritize or make tiers of different investments so that we can come out with a regional backbone or regional regionally important network. I will kind of flavor in that obviously we want to leverage the projects that are already moving forward. That includes all of the regional projects from the different lists, the CDOT list, the TIP, the long range plan, PPRTA. Many of those projects have multimodal components to them, even ones that just say roadway capacity projects. Very often they are roadway capacity with sidewalk improvements or with side path improvements. So we want to make sure we're leveraging and counting those improvements as well when we try to identify what that network is. I threw up a map here of this is from that 2015 non-motorized plan. So eventually something like this is what we want to get to, of this is the core network, but obviously pull it forward 10 years and have a plan and something we can all coalesce around moving forward. So what I'd like from you is, it doesn't have to be today, but if you could provide comments to me, to Jason, to the project team. We want to know, what does the plan need to do for you? What can your constituents gain from this overall regional active transportation plan? One of the things that we need to make sure we keep in mind is CDOT themselves are very interested in what our regional priorities are. So if you have any input on what a regional priority for active transportation project is, we'd love to hear it. We'd love to know what you believe the emphasis should be. And then lastly, we'd like to know if there's any controversial items that we need to either watch out for, make sure we include, make sure we avoid any of those conversations that you're having, that your constituents are very concerned about. We'd love to know about them now so that we can start making sure we address them appropriately. And then my last slide is all about next steps. As I mentioned, we are pushing for the survey. We'd love to get, Jason had a desire to get over 1,000 comments in that survey. We need another big push to make that happen before the 19th. The reason the 19th is important is because we are going to have a PPACG Transportation Advisory Committee workshop on the 22nd, where we are going to ask those members to provide us their perspective on regional emphasis and the regional projects. We want to provide an initial recommendations list by May, by the first Friday in May. We'll have additional stakeholder interviews after that project list is completed, and then we're looking to have a draft report by the start of June. So would love to hear any of your questions and answer in any way I can.
Questions, Commissioner Vanderwerth.
Yes, thank you. This is Commissioner Vanderwerf, and thank you for the presentation. While you were talking, I took your survey.
Perfect. I appreciate that very much. And then send it to your significant other, send it to your colleagues, and have them do the same. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. I do want to let you know though that I think you're missing a few things that need to be in the survey. One in particular is a field box that allows somebody to put some text into it so that the context of your responses can be better understood. And don't feel bad. This is often a weakness of surveys where you just get like yes, no answers or something like that, and then you can't actually explain why you respond. And then there were a couple of other of the boxes where you had these sliding statements that could slide up and down for prioritization, but none of the statements were statements that I support. But when I submit the survey, they're going to be in a particular order, and the one on the top is going to be indicated as my priority. And I think it's kind of important to just simply recognize that we've got some real challenges for, active mobility considerations. We have a city that's 215 square miles, which is the size of New York City, and has only 500,000 people in it. So we have massive distances for people to get from home to work. And that becomes problematic for scooters and bikes and things like that. Then we have, if you've ever tried to bike Colorado Springs out in the residential areas, this is actually a very, very hilly area, enormous hills. And it's just not practical for people that live in these areas who maybe work downtown to bike into work. And the only people that will actually do that are maybe like people that are Olympic level bikers, bicyclers or what have you. So really about the only corridors that seem to make sense is maybe in downtown, or maybe say from Manitou Springs to downtown Colorado Springs, kind of maybe that kind of area. But in those areas, they're actually pretty walkable unless you have some distance to go. So this was the kind of context that I think that trying to invest to get people to commute from a residential area that's very hilly and 10 miles out just doesn't make any sense. Investing there makes no sense to me. But doing something that's kind of in the downtown corridor that allows somebody to maybe go from their office to a restaurant for lunch, that maybe makes more sense. But I have an office downtown, but I'm so close to the restaurants downtown that I just walk because it's like 2 blocks. And then for what I need to do, walking maybe to the chamber from my office, for example, something I do fairly often, all the sidewalks are completely and totally adequate. So for my own needs, I actually don't have any additional requirements. And that wasn't, in fact, actually an option in the survey to say I have no additional requirements. So I just think kind of to understand the context of a lot of this stuff, it'd be great if the survey would have a text field at the end of the survey where people could submit additional comments and help the reviewers of the survey understand some of the context for the responses. So I'll just make that comment. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
I think that's a common comment we find in a lot of these surveys is not having the choice of none of the above. And that gets frustrating. Roland?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. In your study, are you studying, man, see, I'm a round boy, okay, and I use an electric bicycle, and then I have a big motorcycle, okay? But you mentioned a scooter. Is a scooter going to be going up and down these bicycle paths? What's going on? God, I haven't heard no clarity about that.
Yeah, so what I'll say is typically we treat a scooter and a bicyclist as a similar user because of the speed that the vehicle actually goes. So often when you look at separating those types of modes, it's based on how fast people are going. That's why you don't want bicyclists on the sidewalk, because the speed between a walker and a bicyclist is typically pretty stark. And then same with high-speed roadways is why we want to see separate facilities for automobiles and scooters or bicyclists, just because of the speed difference.
Well, you have a vision problem for safety. Okay, if you have them in different speeds on a sidewalk, okay, and you're going up and down these hills, you got to be able to see where you're going at the right speed. So, okay, that's something I was looking at.
Right, any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Councilmember Donaldson?
Yep, thanks, Madam Chair. I have a question about whether the routes that are recommended in the plan, like we have a few charts and it shows some proposed bike trails. Would any of those require reduction in number of car lanes? And I see some of them out in the county, they're obviously just following the road, or they're part of the road. Do any of the bike trails in here require reduction of car lanes?
So what I'll say is none of these projects are this plan proposed. All of this is the local plan. So the county active transportation master plan on their own, or their own trail master plan. So I can't speak to whether any of the locally proposed projects require capacity changes for automobiles.
Okay, because
specifically in the county, we have banned road dieting from our plans, our transportation plans. We literally take the word out, and we take out red light cameras as well.
Because as I said, as a former bike commuter, I think that is a way we create essentially dislike by the majority of the commuters, the people in cars. They see that bike lane there, which gets used very infrequently, and they're jammed up in one car lane where they used to have two, and it creates bad blood between people who commute because they have kids and they have groceries to pick up and it's raining, and cars are very useful in that real world day-to-day life. So as this goes forward, I would keep that in mind, that and the city of Colorado Springs has done it. You know, we have removed roads and added a big wide bike lane in there. And I think that can be counterproductive in the long range. Thanks.
Madam
Mayor
Chair?
Graham?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess a little bit different perspective, but probably similar to Councilman Donaldson's situation. And the experience we've had in Manitou Springs is through Pike Ride. And I don't mean to pick on them, but some hard numbers that we've gotten. Our participation is we contribute $35,000 a year just to the overhead of their program. That doesn't include anything we do for stations or anything like that. Last year we had 1,604 rides. That's for the entire year. If you take $35,000, divide by that number, the cost that we were subsidizing each bike ride was $21.82. Okay, so while I would in some ways like to encourage certainly bike safety and the ability to ride bikes, when you look at some of that, you're saying, geez, this is not a sustainable approach. And in my council, I do not really see eye to eye on this. I was a 6-1 vote opposing continuing funding. And again, I would encourage it some, but I need to see these numbers change. So if it's feasible to have bicycles, that's fine. It may be beyond what we can do. I mean, certainly, to Councilman Donaldson's point, there are times when we see dedicated real estate for a bike and it's not being used. And there are other times when, it's essential to have that space. In Manitou, we don't have a whole lot of real estate, so it is problematic. I think a lot of things Colorado Springs is done with bike paths is great. And I like to ride over here. At home, if I'm not home by 10 in the morning in the summer, there's too much traffic. So, I've got mixed emotions about bikes. The great problem I have with some of our government programs is that we, in the name of sounding good and trying to promote bicycling, we forget that perhaps we're not really increasing safety or use. We're just spending money and trying to feel good about that. Thank you.
Commissioner.
Yes, thank you. I actually also appreciate all of those comments, and I love riding bikes as well, but most of mine is kind of to get exercise and prepare for my summer mountaineering. And I don't use city streets for that. I drive my car down to Cheyenne Mountain State Park and go biking in a park. And it's awesome to have trails in places like that for outdoor health and things like that. But commuting is pretty problematic if you live anywhere outside central downtown area. And then, at least in the Colorado Springs area, if you do live in central downtown, you're usually just maybe a few blocks away from where you need to go. So walking is good. So, I'm glad that we have processes to try to encourage bike riding and walking. Just as a community in general, we need to do things to try to be healthier, and these are ways to be healthier while still getting somewhere. So there's productivity and usefulness in it. But I think we also have to be realistic that there's just simply a limit to how far we can go with this, particularly in a city like Colorado Springs. It's 215 square miles in size. It's just gigantic. And so I think, at some point, the residents might simply say, you know what, we have enough infrastructure and we just don't need any more. And I just hope that some other people that keep pushing it will come to a realization that maybe some communities are at the right level and don't need more. I think that's an important thing. And I appreciate what the mayor of Manitou Springs said, John. In the summer, Manitou Springs is so busy, which is awesome. Tons of tourists. There's no space for bikes in those points in time. So it becomes problematic to kind of get us to greater usage in some areas. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Dixon.
Yeah, this is just an FYI. Up in Green Mountain Falls, we will likely relocate the American Discovery Trail through town. And then we also have a bridge that, quite honestly, really ought to be replaced, because right now we're trying to use it for multimodal traffic. Really was never originally designed to do that. So that's just an FYI.
Appreciate that. And we can make sure that we're keeping track of that and that those potential projects appear in the plan. And that's going to be one of the advantages of the plan. If I can talk, Madam Chair, for just 1 minute before unless there's another question, I don't want to cut anyone off.
There is, yes, Commissioner.
Not a question, just a comment, and actually it's a follow-up on Councilman Donaldson's question earlier about the vision statement. I think in your answer to Councilman Donaldson, you stated that, well, common means more common. And my immediate response to that I whispered to Commissioner Williams here was, well, why doesn't it just say more common? I think you might get more traction just by simply adding the word more common, because then it's a matter of encouragement and a desire to have more opportunities for people, rather than just saying that it will. I think that's maybe beyond vision. But anyway, just comment.
Yeah, I think we can make that change. Appreciate it if that's helpful. And just by way of closing, just wanted to make the comment that one of the great things about doing a voluntary plan that does not have to is not burdened with following a long list of requirements is that we're free to take our own common sense path in how we approach this, and to do what makes sense, to change focus if we need to look for where the real opportunities are. So there's not really an overarching vision that's coming from anywhere else. So we're really free to pursue this in whatever way makes sense to the region. So the project is built on member jurisdiction projects. So staff, the consultants, PPACG are not introducing any new projects into the process. So we're just looking for synergies, things like consistency. Maybe we don't need more infrastructure. If that's the case, maybe then we could benefit from things like consistent design guidelines, things like that. So we're really interested in just looking for what are the opportunities that are good for this region at this point in time, and just finding those synergies and what the real opportunities are. So with that, appreciate your time. Thanks for the comments. Very helpful.
Yeah, I did. So, I had 3 kids and they were 5 and under, and I'm trying to envision getting my kids off in the morning and just life, right? Get your kids off in the morning and you're trying to get out there and you got to ride a bike and you got to get this and that, and just the practicality of a lot of this. I mean, more common to me is potentially recreation, right? Just come down to Fountain and drive that old Pueblo Road that we were all just talking about on a Saturday. It is across the road. You can't get, if you get behind a group of bikers, you're out of luck. You might as well just go park for a few minutes. And because they're really out there enjoying it. And that's great to see that. But we have citizens in Fountain that are looking at these trails and they go bordering their property or want to have a portion of going through their property. And they're saying, no, I don't want it. I don't want the people in the trash they leave and the way they behave and the food they throw on the ground that my livestock could potentially get a hold of. And so I think a lot of this plan is going to be determined by the behavior of the people who use the trails. And I think that's an important realistic aspect we need to look at. Because if you're opening a portion of your property, like we saw with the mountains last year, to allowing people to go through it, there needs to be responsibility on the portion of the user to be a responsible user of it and not trash the person's property and leave things behind that could damage them. So that's just my comment, because you want it to work, but reality is we're all in this world together. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just a quick final note on the advantages of having this plan. So there are some bike and pedestrian related projects that don't necessarily make it into our long range transportation plan or our TIP because those are fiscally constrained documents. This plan is not. So there are a few jurisdictions that may have existing projects that have gone through their local process that don't make it into those other PPACG documents. We can accommodate those projects in this plan so that people can get their projects represented in a regional document. And another advantage, one of the comments that CDOT has made to us is that if we could give them a clear regional priority or two, just a small number of projects that we want to do and be clear about that those projects would tend to perform better in their state and federal prioritization processes. So partially a question of funding as far as those things are concerned. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, that takes us on to item B, crash study. Jason O'Brien. Went back and changed your hat, huh?
This will be easy because we're actually using the same consultant. They've done an excellent job. No, this has been a topic of interest to a lot of people. So during early 2023, as we were preparing an annual safety update for this board, actually, state crash data revealed an interesting new trend. So for the first time, aggression surpassed impairment for the first time ever, as far as we can tell, as the leading cause of crashes in certain categories. That occurred in 2020. It raised questions about what else may have changed that year, because that was a really substantial change in driver behavior. And it turned out the answer was a great deal. Great deal changed in 2020. Some research was done, some phone calls got made. Long story short, everybody knew that something had changed, something was wrong. Nobody could say exactly what. We talked with planners, engineers, law enforcement, people in education, public messaging. Everybody knew something was very different. Research got broadened with the same results. Everybody knows something's different. But there was really no explanation or guidance for people working in the traffic safety space. Nobody could say for sure what was going on. And we don't know what to do because some of the old countermeasures might not work as well. So if people are doing things for new reasons. An existing study couldn't be found, so it was decided to initiate a relatively small budget-wise crash study that narrowly examined whether anything had changed since 2020 and what to do about it. So not a broad crash causation study, but a narrowly tailored study to look at just the differences post 2020. The study is not designed to give a complete picture, but just to provide some reasonably well-supported ideas about what might have happened and how people working in the space or just tracking these issues might want to address them, with a particular focus on the Pikes Peak region, of course. The Olson engineering firm was retained to lead the study late last year, and now we have a draft final document. With that, I'll turn it over to Ted Richard from Olson to review some of the findings and take your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Olson.
Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate the time. I'm sorry that I could not be there in person today. Please let me know if you can see this PowerPoint.
Yes, we can see it.
Yep.
All right, great. I wished I could see it a little bit better, but all right. So the series crash study, as Jason said, and we gave you a brief update on this previously, but we basically broke this. I'll say it's a little bit of a research project, a little bit of an analysis project, and then we drafted some recommendations and proposed countermeasures that should be considered moving forward. So we started with literature and data review, basically seeing what other studies were being done that were similar, what other data sources existed, and then the most promising of those, we conducted follow-up investigations. We reached out to authors of many documents and got their insights and other studies. The second phase was, well, let's talk to the people on the ground. What is enforcement saying? What is the insurance industry saying? What is the healthcare industry saying? And what are our transportation professionals observing for some of these trends that we're seeing? We also did extensive public surveys to hear what people's perspective on, was there a problem? And if so, what are their perceptions of what some of the causes might be? And then, as I said, we drafted some recommendations and countermeasures, which I'll share with you today. So the simple story from what we learned in our literature and data review is that there is an obvious trend. Even with the tremendous drop in travel during COVID and the actions taken related to COVID with the lockdowns, VMT, or vehicle miles traveled, dropped significantly. That has about rebounded to 2019 levels now, but we're still seeing elevated serious and fatal injuries. Also, as Jason mentioned, between 2019 and 2023, aggressive driving replaced some other factors such as DUI, DWI as a top contributing factor to those crashes. And the top 3 driver actions that were cited by our enforcement professionals were careless driving, failure to yield, and following too close. As I said, it was obvious these trends have continued. Our second phase, like I said, we reached out to a lot of people, had a lot of conversations, and I tried to summarize these. I'm sorry for the wordy slide. This was as short as I could get this one. 3 things to remember about what we heard from our stakeholders is that they perceived changes in driver attitude, including a sense of invincibility as drivers had less traffic on the roadways during those lockdowns. And there was also happened to be a coincident reduction in law enforcement presence for a variety of factors, including just hiring challenges, trying to keep our officers safe. So there was certainly a drop in enforcement. Also, during that period, our younger male population actually were driving more during that period, based on some data that we had available. And this is also a demographic that is more likely to participate in risky driving behavior. Meanwhile, what we would characterize as our safest driving demographic actually reduced their driving the most. And that contributed to a change in
in the overall driving demographic that could have contributed to some of these trends. Aggressive driving, speeding, impaired driving, all of these factors have persisted. And it's our observation that these behaviors that were enabled during some of these lockdowns may take time to correct and to unlearn. Public surveys, if you read the draft report, there's a lot of information in there about all the questions that we ask. And yes, our survey probably was not perfect either, but we did get over 2,500 respondents for a short initial survey that we did. People were very interested in talking about traffic safety. And then we sent out a more detailed follow-up survey where we got over 600 responses. Some of the pie charts here just illustrate some of what respondents told us. They feel people behave in some of these ways because there's a lack of consequences. People are enabled by a sense of anonymity. And then we asked some questions about, well, what would they recommend be the countermeasures? Overwhelmingly, probably enforcement was the first thing people talked about. We did ask a question about education and engagement, and people had kind of mixed reactions to what would be the most effective means, and that's the pie chart on the right. One thing, and this may be a recency bias, but certainly most respondents felt less safe today than they did before the pandemic. So the last phase, something we've just kind of finished up here, and it's in the draft report, is some just discussion of countermeasures. Like Jason said, a lot of this is evaluating what's worked in the past, trying to determine what, if anything, is different about the trends of today, and how can we tailor some of these countermeasures to address that. Safety is usually built around 3 E's. Education, enforcement, and engineering. And certainly I think that paradigm holds true. One of the things that we looked at when we were looking at these countermeasures was, well, what can the region do? What can local agencies do? And different countermeasures have different levels of control. Some things are, easier to do than others. We heard that discussion earlier in your meeting today. Some things are easier to implement than others. And so what we came up with was kind of a scale of recommended countermeasures that should be considered. This is not an implementation plan because there's still a lot of, this needs to work with other transportation planning efforts, and certainly a lot of it will probably be or could be implemented through your local agencies. However, some things could benefit from regional strategies. There's everything on here from education, engagement, enforcement. If this was a serious enough problem, I heard, the comment about banning red light cameras from your toolbox, which is certainly something that can be considered. There has been talk about implementing things like speed safety cameras on certain dangerous corridors. That's an extreme measure, and I think we'd have to determine what are we trying to achieve with some of those things. Some of the easier things are things that you could have that might be easier to achieve but require regional effort, is establishing like a regional safety action committee that includes law enforcement, community leaders, and local government to come up with specific recommendations. An important thing that we identified was that any measures that are considered, a before and after study should be done so that you can see if it's making a difference. And one of the things I wanted to mention, probably the easiest thing that you have the most control over, is to continue funding and support for the PPACG Regional Traffic Safety Champion and all the other existing safety programs that are underway. Some recommendations that we have just based on what we've seen, what we're seeing currently with traffic in the region, is it takes time to change behaviors. Again, COVID and the COVID lockdowns enabled a lot of these behaviors. When we emptied a lot of streets of cars, we changed the demographics. People learned a different way of driving, and it's going to take time to change those behaviors. Enforcement is a key, absolutely, but not by itself. And a strategic approach will include enforcement, education, and engineering, and results should be evaluated over the appropriate time frame. One of the things that we thought was good about the timing of this study and the completion of it is both the region and the city of Colorado Springs separately. They both have grants have been awarded to complete safety action plans, and we feel like that this study can inform that plan development. So this was a unique challenge. The data told us certain things about what was observable. Enforcement and other stakeholders told us stories about what they're seeing with drivers. And that aggressive driving is now noted as a leading contributor, which is really, in the field of traffic safety, traffic engineering, aggression is not usually something that we have to figure out how to try and solve. Crash trends such as technology or other contributing factors such as technology, infrastructure design, or physical context are usually triggers for these trends. And so that's why, as Jason said, this was a very narrowly scoped study, and I wished I could give you, very definitive steps to take over the next few months to correct this trend. But I think it's something that this study can provide you information to make decisions and flesh out more with those safety action plans that will be upcoming. So with that, hopefully I didn't go too fast, and I'd be willing or hopefully answer any of your questions that you might have.
Okay, reminding everybody it is 11:07. How many questions do you have, Mayor Dixon?
Yeah, there's currently a bill going through that specifies the AVIS type system. And through some of your comments, I'm kind of wondering, do you think that's a good or bad thing? And would that trigger then us maybe changing our position here on the legislative side?
And that's a question for me?
Yep. The AVIS system, do you see it as potentially good or bad?
I think it depends totally on the context and what we want to do in the Pikes Peak region. I mean, personally, and being a resident of the area, I guess I'm not a fan of statewide mandates. I think those kind of decisions could be made locally.
Okay, but as a system itself, I thought I heard you say that speed cameras, thought I heard maybe a kind of a negative context with speed cameras.
No, I think speed safety cameras, if that's the step you want to take, they have proven effective. But I understand what the reality is of, when people object to, red light cameras and that sort of thing. A speed safety camera is a different level of enforcement than the Pikes Peak region has engaged in the past.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, that bill is Senate Bill 24-195.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. It's important data. So, all right.
Thank you.
Especially important to give it on today, which is CDOT Day of Remembrance for CDOT workers that were lost in the line of duty in the last year. So when you drive home, just be thinking of that when you drive through a construction zone, because I think Colorado Springs has got the corner marketed on construction. So you guys have got a lot of construction going on. Getting hard to get up there from the south end of town. So, all right, that takes us on to, and just want to let everybody know, Andy came over and said we're going to postpone item D, the long range transportation plan update. So we'll be postponing that till next month. So Jared.
Hello, everyone. Good morning once again. So I'm coming to you with an information item on our digital accessibility statement. And this is something that we have drafted in response to the rulemaking process that concluded a couple months ago, 1501-11. In these draft statement, which is attached, this is accomplishing 3 items that is required as part of the state rule. That is commitment to a timely response to reports of inaccessible materials or requests for reasonable accommodation or modification. That's 11.6A. Process and how to request a reasonable accommodation or modification, or how to report inaccessible content. That's 11.6B. And annual reporting on progress to compliance. That is 11.7B within those rules. You know, our goal as we get closer to July 1 is that all of our materials on our website will be accessible. And so we're hoping to avoid the complaint process, but a lot of the document also focuses on what the complaint process is going to look like. We have a July 1 deadline. We are actively redoing our website as well as the other websites that we maintain. That includes our friends with PPRTA, DrySmart Colorado, as well as an age-friendly portal that we manage. The complaint process, as it is outlined within this draft statement, closely follows our Title VI complaint process. Our thought was that this is another commitment to accessibility, just like Title VI. And so rather than create 2 totally separate processes and timelines and requirements and everything else, let's try to keep these together as much as we possibly can. Right now, this is a standalone document because Title VI won't come back up for board renewal until next fall or next summer. And when we do that, we're hoping to really incorporate as much of these documents within Title VI without jeopardizing our Title VI requirements at the same time. I just want to point out the rules do not require a governing body to adopt them. You can if you choose to. We're bringing it to you because this is something new, and this is something I know everyone else is probably dealing with in varying degrees of administrative process. So you can choose to just give us direction and say, staff, go forward and adopt the process as you see fit, or we can bring it back to the board for formal adoption at either the May or June meetings, knowing that we do have a timeline of our deadline of July 1 to have this in place. Happy to go through any of the materials in specific, but I kind of want to just give you the highlights as we go through this process.
Any comments or questions by anybody? All right. Thank you very much.
We just wanted to let you know we are on it, and if you have any questions, let us know.
Right. Okay. Alrighty, we're skipping item D, the long range transportation plan update, and that takes us on to CDOT, who is out doing their Day of Remembrance project, so they are not here. And we have the executive director's report. And I think I actually, Holly, did I skip over stack?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, before we go to the
Stack did it
stack
me.
report, I will do my best Shane Ferguson impression. I do have his just a couple of projects he wanted to pass along, but yes, they're all out on Remembrance Day today, so they send their apologies. But 3 projects they wanted to brief on. One is that Mayor Pro Tem Gardine will be happy to hear this. They're in the process of awarding the US 24 East Surface Treatment Project near Callahan, and they expect it'll be under construction sometime in June. So that's coming very soon. Yep, well done. Secondly, they are opening bids this Thursday for the Airport Powers Interchange Project, and he'll follow up with this and let us know how that's gone once they open up those bids. And third, finally, this month is Work Zone Safety Month. They wanted to pass that along. April 15th through 19th in particular is National Work Zone Safety Week, with the motto being work zones are temporary, actions behind the wheel can last forever. So just wanted to remind everybody to slow down and eliminate distracted driving, especially as you're going through work zones. So that's all he's got for this month.
All right, thank you. Uh-huh.
Our staff meeting was canceled, so no report.
Woohoo. All right. I didn't mind that one at all. I was like, yay. All right, Andy, do you have anything?
Sure, just a couple things, real quick, Madam Chair. Want to introduce, I think most of you have met and realized this, but wanted to introduce Karen Rowe one more time because we're just super excited to have her join us as our new regional grant navigator to serve all of our communities across the region, helping our local jurisdictions go after grant opportunities under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and also under the Inflation Reduction Act, thanks to funding and support from the state. So we've got Karen under contract for the next 12 months, I think, roughly, and been making the rounds already, getting out there with our communities. I know you've been up in Park County and all around the region. Anything you wanted to mention, Karen?
Thank you. It's been a while. Thanks. So I'm Karen Rowe, again, with my hat as what's called the RGN, the Regional Grant Navigator, and I'm part of Region 4, which is the Teller Park, El Paso County. And it's funded by the state. It's an innovative program that Colorado put together in order to take advantage of these federal grants that are coming out. So there's not only, they funded 14 different regions around the state. So we just had a meeting yesterday in Leadville to coordinate together on our efforts, make sure we're sharing information, sharing opportunities, and learning from each other on that. So again, it's meant to, there's other things funded through this program, such as grant writing consultants, grant reviewing consultants. There's a local match fund, about $10 million that people can apply for. And again, that's how Woodland Park got the regional safety grant through Safe Streets for All. But there's more just coming out all the time. So yes, I've met with City of Manitou Springs, Fair Play, Park County. I'm meeting with Fountain next today. And then Monument, and I'm trying to reach out to as many people as possible. And I'm trying to also keep track of the grants that we're going after. I'm coordinating with the city of Colorado Springs as well as El Paso County. But for example, there is an active transportation grant out right now that talks about finalizing those connected routes for bikes and peds that you might have between communities or within a community. And again, if for the less financially fortunate communities, there could be no match for some of these grants. And then even if there is a federal requirement for a match, there is the state pool of grant match. So I'm super excited to be here. My relationships have helped in the past, and then coming back to the table, gaining new relationships in this new role. But really, I'm here to try to get communities money or get set up for future opportunities to get money. And again, it's not just transportation, it's broadband, electric vehicles, water, and a broad facet of transportation. Plus, there's tax credit through the Information Reductions Act for some of these programs. So as I learn more, I'll be sharing more, but also be reaching out to your staff, or if you're interested in me coming to any of the elected official meetings, I'm happy to do that. There's just every day there's more grants coming out that it's almost too much to keep up with. But we do have a lot of resources, and it's a great opportunity to take advantage of this money that's coming our way.
All right, thank you. And again, welcome back.
Okay, want to contact phone number?
So I have a PPACG email, and then I'll just hand you my phone number and my email.
Oh, you big chicken. Come on now.
Well, as John points out, it's a public information, so we'll make sure everyone here gets it. But and if anyone does want my contact information, either John or I work with Danelle Miller, that's who I work with the most. Reach out to her, and I will be. I'll make sure that everyone here gets my information, and it's available.
Well, the person that's going to take over my be contacting you. So I just want to give him valid information, okay? So
Yeah, no, I will make sure to do that. And anyone here can reach out to any of the PPACG members. Again, I'll have a PPACG email to get in touch with and when I correspond on this role in particular. So I'm a contract employee with PPACG. I'm not a direct employee with them because it's a state funded position for a limited amount of time. But I would encourage you and your communities to take advantage of it and of me and the other resources available.
Very
Thank
good.
you, Andy.
Thank you,
Thank
Karen.
you.
Yes, and just one other thing real quick. Just want to point out our new artwork that we have in our space. It's provided by Susan Schiller, a Colorado Springs artist that specializes in fine art photography and senior portraits. So thank you, Sherry, for finding new and great artists we can put on display. If you have any suggestions that of artists that you're aware of, please let us know. Let Sherry know.
You said senior portraits, is that right, Andy?
That's what
So
the
it's very
language said.
pertinent to the group here.
It is, of course, yeah. So we're all
No,
Except for the
after
ladies.
seeing Roland's gift, maybe we need to get open it up to staff members one
Jody
month,
may
right?
be on display here. at some point.
Yeah. I'm
Right.
sure we have some talented staff members around here. So I'm always impressed when Commissioner Gonzalez puts some of his paintings online. And so we do have some, not me, my stick people fall over and die.
I think we should have a couple weeks with Commissioner Gonzalez's artwork on the wall in here.
Yeah.
He's really gotten really good at painting.
Yeah. Jeannie Lamborn does good painting. Yep. So, yep. Alrighty. Takes us on to, I just want to remind everybody, please look through the list of current committee openings. I know I emailed several of you trying to see if you could get some members. Mobility Coordinating Committee is super important, especially when you're talking about specialized transit. So there are a lot of us on here that need a representative for that. So if you could reach out to your community. And most of those meetings are hybrid, right, Andy?
Yes, they are all hybrid. Yes.
Okay. Alrighty. And any member entity announcements? Todd, did you want to talk about this?
Yeah, we attended, I think, several of us actually attended the Comcast RISE program. It's available to businesses, small businesses in El Paso County. And it's basically a kind of an assistance to try to help them get their business off the ground. But however, you do have to have a business, I believe, that's been you have to be in business for 3 years. Sorry, I don't have the sheet in front of me, so.
Right. Okay. Randy, maybe we'll have you send this out to everybody. Okay. Great. Sounds like an interesting program with a possible grant there.
If I might, Madam Chair, just tack on to Mr. Dixon's comments a little bit. So this region of El Paso County and Pueblo County is one of only 5 regions in the entire country selected by Comcast to help small businesses scale up and grow. And there will be 100 companies between El Paso and Pueblo selected by Comcast. They're going to get an enormous amount of funding and support, which will include support to build websites, to increase their marketing. They're going to get actual cash money to the tune of thousands of dollars, these 100 companies that will get this. So to Mr. Dixon's point, we just need to, if we find a company that's having some challenges scaling, but they've got a good product and they've been around for a while, they should go on the Comcast website and consider applying for that grant, because 100 companies here are going to get that grant. And it's actually very prestigious for that kind of private action, and to be one of only 5 places in the entire country selected to do it.
Okay. All righty. Just make sure if you are a business and you get a grant, you find out ahead of time if it counts as income against your business for that year. Been there, done that. Commissioner Stone.
Yeah, not really an announcement, but sorta. Which is on March 23rd, Teller County Commissioners celebrated the 125th anniversary of the founding of Teller County. So El Paso County, thank you for the gold mine. And actually at the time, the population of Teller County was roughly equal to the population of El Paso County back in 1899. And it was a very large battle at the legislature to wrest the mine away from El Paso County. But again, we honor our past. Thank you.
All right, congratulations. Okay. Anything else? Anybody online, anything? All right. Is it time for lunch?
Yes.
All right, meeting adjourned.